Welcome to the Better Outcomes podcast, where we discuss all things leadership, sales, and communication in Australian business. At Better Outcomes Training, we provide world-class training solutions for businesses who want to arm their teams with cutting-edge skills to lead better, sell better, and enjoy more success, purpose, and profit from the work they do. For a full breakdown of all the courses we offer, visit www.better-outcomes.com.au. There's also a link in the description. Now, on to today's podcast. Enjoy.
Recording in progress. I can edit this out now because I know how to, but I might just leave this in. Better Outcomes Training Podcast. How are you, everyone? I'm here again with good friend Paul Harrison, about to talk all things coaching today. But how are you, Paulie? How you been this week?
All good, cuz. Thank you. Whilst I enjoy my hydrogen water, very good. Thank you.
It's been a long old week. Here, people. No sponsorship ads here yet. We'll get to that at some stage.
No, it's been a good week. It's been that would have been probably about 50 people trained this week over 3 workshops, which was cool.
Wow.
And that would have been in maybe 7 or 8 different industries, which is interesting. But it was a good week, a long week. But you leave it all there. You're exhausted by the end of it, and you're happily exhausted, if I can say that. The clients are happy, business has been done. You feel exhausted, and you're happy with the situation. What more can I say,
mate? I had the privilege of attending one of your training sessions the other week. Came along as a co-host, which I think all I did was hand out some papers and make notes and things. Very little contribution from me. And
come on, bro.
The watching you in full flight was pretty cool, but also experiencing it, standing up there in front of people, coaching, teaching, asking some questions, and watching them progress along kind of a structured journey, structured curve towards a desired outcome was really it was brilliant to watch, and I can see why you love it so much.
Yeah,
I reckon it nearly borders on being addictive, just the joy that you get out of helping these people. So I was very impressed. I decided probably a good idea that we talk about this and talk about some coaching today.
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, Cuz, before we get into it, obviously it was great to have you there, and obviously you added a lot of context to a lot of guys in the room, which I think was very, very, very helpful for them as well. So yeah, it was awesome having you alongside, and I know that they're very happy with how things have gone. So it was awesome.
It was good. It was good to be able to give things a little bit of a twist in terms of towards the construction industry side more.
Yeah,
something that I've been thinking about ever since. Making sure that if the opportunity pops up again, I can add even more value. It was really good. It's really good to get up there and experience it, I guess.
Yeah, so. It really is. It's a nice aspect to be a part of, and to obviously to facilitate as well. But I think certainly to your point with regards to how it could borderline on addiction if you enjoy doing it, I think it's really a shared connection you can formulate with people when they actually get breakthroughs. When somebody has a breakthrough, like those aha moments, and they've got a different way of looking at something, which is going to empower them to get those better outcomes. It's a connection. I think it's a real connection with people. I think that's you leave these events and you're exhausted, but you're exhausted and you're happy, because you've been able to be involved with that. Those people making those breakthroughs and learning those new strategies and having the confidence and clarity to be able to utilize them.
Yeah, watching the actual aha moments unfold was what I was, and by addictive I mean it's the feeling around it that you see because you've changed someone's life, and it's a really good feeling, and you just want to go and help more people. That's 100%. What I mean by how it's addictive. I don't mean it like in a bad way. I mean it in its most positive form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Watching the aha moments of people, and there was one character, and he's writing away as you were talking, and he just stopped mid sent. He stopped middle of your sentence and looked up, dropped his pen, and then just kind of cradled
Yeah.
his hands
Yeah.
around his head and looked down and was shaking his head and rubbing his temples, and then sat back, and you could see him kind of unwinding everything he'd ever known before, and because it had just been the spotlight had been shined on something else. So there
Yeah.
was various other ways that people showed it, but it was really cool to watch, man. It was really cool to watch.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm very blessed to do what I love, you know. Okay.
Yeah.
And honing that skill really becomes like an addiction as well, you know, because you just want to learn more, you want to study more. How do I make sure I can speed up this learning curve for people? And I think that's a big thing, you know. I
Yeah,
really believe that.
it was really good to watch the master in action, I reckon. So that led me to wanting to talk about coaching today, and how to get it right. What we think coaching is, coaching versus, say, mentoring, that kind of thing. The distinction there, and then how you coach and how you've found, in your opinion, the best way to kind of get people to where they need to be, or where their desired outcome is, kind of thing. Very much like in the kind of in the sales world, where you're getting a client to their desired outcome, and maybe they don't even know it yet.
Yeah.
Maybe you're seeing potential in someone that they haven't realized yet, and then being able to get them to there is something that
Yeah.
I really want to explore and talk about. And and just to let everyone know that I'm really blessed, because I've got this bloke sitting opposite me as a really good coach, and I'm married to one of the world's best coaches. So I'm just a coached individual. I'm a byproduct of these two wonderful people. Everything you see from is just I've been coached to where I am. I'm a model, basically. So yes, not everyone has the blessed life that I have when it comes to it. So maybe we could start off with a definition of coaching, Paulie.
Yeah.
Do you
Beautiful.
reckon your definition of coaching is? Mine's kind of managing people towards their desired outcome, towards the desired goal, kind of what I said there,
Yeah.
and then again maybe unlocking further potential in them. Um, Yourself, what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, you know, because this whole aspect of coaching and with any aspect of corporate training really is one of the big things you have to realize is I think there's wisdom in definition. What I mean by that is if I use a commonly used word, a commonly used term, particularly in the training world, there's so many words that we use frequently, and different facilitators will use it, and people write books based on it, and the interesting thing is so many words have so many different meanings to so many different people. So the first
Yes.
thing we need to really look at with regards to training is make sure everybody's on the same page. And the interesting thing is when I run coaching workshops, I might have 4, 5, 6 different tables around there, and I always start out with let's get a definition first. So and it doesn't mean it's a dictionary definition, but effectively what it is, it's the same level of learning now that we could all have as a foundation before we start building on all the skill sets moving forward. So
Yes.
I go around the tables, and the crazy thing is there's we've got a lot of people, a lot of experience in there, a lot of people who've done a fair amount of coaching that are they're coaches as part of their jobs as well. And sometimes you get analogies come in from more of a sporting aspect. Sometimes there's confusion with regards to the two words that are commonly used there. Obviously, are coaching and mentoring,
Yeah.
and very often there's a crossover with regards to understanding exactly what's meant by those terms. And it really doesn't serve anybody's purpose to run off to the dictionary and say my definition is right or my definition is wrong. But the way I define it is purely to make it as effective as I possibly can for the actual training. So if I look at those two words that are often confused or used interchangeably, let's say, rather than confused, is mentoring. Coaching is a coach, somebody who asks you world-class questions and holds you to account. So a coach, somebody who asks world-class questions and holds to account. Again, it's not a dictionary definition, but it's a broad definition I like to start with before we start cultivating skills around it. And a mentor is somebody, I believe, who's been down the road you're currently on, or being down the road you want to go down. So from time to time, there's some very fortunate people who can They can find mentors who have coaching skills as well and an interest in mentoring or coaching them. Those people are a rarity, I think. Obviously, there's a whole industry that has developed a lot of different coaches now, as well as corporate training coaches, executive coaches, life coaches, all these different coaching people, different coaching skills. So they are a lot more available, I would say, than mentors, because obviously it's a business.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that coaching would be somebody who can ask world-class questions and hold you to account, and a mentor is somebody who's been down that road that you're currently on. That's where I like to start with my definitions of training. What are your thoughts on that?
That's what I thought of mentoring. I think mentors are, like you said, a lot rarer than coaches, only because trying to find someone, A, who's been down that road, and B, who
Yeah,
has the time and the inclination to show you the ropes. Um, I don't think you ever get any criticism from anyone who's doing better than you. But having said that, they may not have the time to be able to show you. So, that's if you're in a blessed enough position to find a mentor who's
yeah.
willing to help you through, I would suggest that you do everything in your power to make sure that you take all that on board and run with it as much as you can, because you're in a
That
very good spot.
that's really a great point there, cuz with regards to and for anybody listening to this, if you're looking to get yourself a mentor, as we said, coaching is quite commercial now, so there's a lot of coaches out there that can actually do coaching. But if you're looking for a mentor, if you're considering approaching mentors, folks, make sure you can answer the question with regards to what's in it for them. Now, again,
Yeah.
very importantly,
Hmm.
it's not about that they're self-serving or selfish people, but the fact of the matter is, if you want to be mentored by somebody like that, they're successful people. You're not going to go to somebody who's not successful. And because of that, their time is valuable. And
Yes.
so, therefore, there needs to be some ROI in it as well. And here's something else as well for people just to bear in mind when it comes to mentoring. And I know there's connections of mine who've done mentoring for people for free. And the craziest thing is they've been approached and there's been no sort of incentive for them to do any coaching other than some degree of contribution. But the crazy thing is that there have been people who've said, I want to be mentored by X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z says, okay, I'll mentor you an hour a week or what have you. They don't pay for it, and then they don't take it very seriously.
Yeah.
If people pay for something, they when I say people who pay attention. So if we're all excited about getting a mentor now, cool, but keep that same energy. Otherwise, if you're paying for it, then obviously you've got some involvement there as well. So you've got a higher
Yeah.
motivation to make it a success, I guess.
That's why I thought of it. Like, you're only going to really want to be mentored by someone who's been very successful in whatever it is you choose to do, and they're probably very busy.
Yeah,
So the chances that they've got, they're sitting around on the couch with a stack of spare time to throw in your direction is probably not going to happen. So, um, mentoring, yep, that's where I come in from. And coaching, yeah, coaching is something that I think is a very special skill from certain individuals. I don't think everyone can be a coach. You can learn how to be a coach, but some people are, like anything else, naturally gifted to it, or have a way with it naturally. And a lot of it comes through the love of doing stuff. Kind of like, if you think of sporting coaches, they love the game, or love being around the players and that kind of interaction, and can really see, and they have like a skill for spotting talent, or spotting things in other people, and helping them along the journey. So, that, like yourself, you can really, the way you coach, the way you bring out the best in people and involve them in the coaching as well, which is something I'd like to talk to you level of interaction with the group that we trained the other week. And I was quite surprised by how much emphasis was that you put on them to answer the questions that they were looking for. So, because in your words, discovery is a lot more powerful than disclosure.
yeah,
Yeah. So, me telling you what to do doesn't hold any weight. It's like information exchange. Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about some coaches having a information exchange where they'll sit down, they'll tell you all about everything you need to know, and then you've got to go away and figure out how to do it.
I would say that I see that more in the training world, I think, than the
training
actual
world,
coaching world. Yeah. So there's potentially trainers who would just talk, or they might just give information rather than creating that behavioral change.
Yeah. And the way you do it, the way you ask questions of the people that you're coaching and force them to find their own answers to it, which helps them put it into context a bit too, I think. Can you talk to us more about that, about your style of why that is a lot more powerful, like asking questions of people rather than like telling them what to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's you use the term there, discovery is more powerful than disclosure. And just for anybody who's a little bit confused by that, what we mean by that is effectively, if I'm in a situation where I want to influence or persuade somebody, or I want to really get them to get a point, it is more powerful than to discover the solution rather than me just disclose a solution. And guys, you'll know from what we made some mention of the other day, the stereotypical scenario is that if I'm trying to sell something to somebody, so I'm selling to Cuz, I'm selling a solution to Cuz, and I say, Cuz, listen, this is the best solution for your business. It's going to be absolutely perfect. That's disclosure. So I'm disclosing that we're the best solution for you. What happens in that situation with real life? It's very often Cuz is going to filter that information through his perception of me. So he might well think, well, Paul, you've got an agenda there where you're trying to make a sale and trying to make a commission. But if I can allow Cuz to discover that we are the best possible solution for him, then he's going to be much more committed to that outcome. So effectively, the best way to be able to do that is to be able to ask questions. So if I go a little bit deeper into that, and again, by no means am I a neuroscientist or anything like that, but I believe that, as we can clearly tell, I believe that the brain takes on questions and statements very differently. So what I mean by that is if I make a statement at somebody, often the statement is going to be met with the person's desire to be right. So if I'm in a situation where I'm trying to influence and persuade someone, but they've got a very strongly held belief, and I give them a statement telling them they're wrong, instead of doing A, B, and C, they should do an X, Y, and Z, then effectively what's going to happen is they're going to push back on exactly what I've said, and then we're going to have conflict there. It's not going to go well. And a lot of the people that I work with, particularly at the higher levels of influence and persuasion, they want to be able to influence and persuade very opinionated people, disagreeable people. And you know, when I say that term, folks, disagreeable people, we need disagreeable people in the teams as well. You know, not everybody can be agreeable, and just, you know, we need diversity in these teams. But very often you've got a senior level decision maker who's pretty opinionated. They've got a good track record to support it as well. Then effectively to challenge their views on what we need to do head on, it's normally not going to be a good solution. So hitting them with just statements, just disclosure, they're going to keep rebutting. But asking a question, it's near and impossible for me to ask you a question without your brain going away and finding an answer. And as we start to ask these questions, particularly world-class questions, and we will get into that no doubt a little bit later there, because with regards to what actually makes world-class questions. But when you can really ask good questions, particularly if you're good at building rapport and connection with people as well, then effectively what's going to happen is they are going to be in a much better position to discover that maybe you do have a solution that's best for them. Because here's the thing as well, I think it's very difficult to have somebody committed to your outcome if you are trying to just tell them what to do, particularly if they've got a strong position that opposes you right now. So if you're just trying to, you know, you're trying to bulldoze your way through just with statement, people's defenses come up very, very quickly. And then often I've seen it turn into an argument over not what's right, but who's right. And that's, of course, when our egos take control of these situations.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's always good fun.
Yeah, asking the questions very much gets people to reflect. And again, you have to be able to do it well. You have to be able to do it in a way that's that really is a skill set. And again, I Every single time I train people, it's about always making sure they're being, using the techniques with truth, honesty, and integrity. And my belief is if I can give people enough strategies, they will be able to use good strategies, truthfully, honestly, and ethically in every situation they find themselves in. So yeah, I think that that is really why asking questions is, without sounding too corny, is the answer. Asking questions is the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Asking questions of them, yeah. Asking why they want that kind of outcome,
absolutely.
what they think the steps are, why they think they're failing in the first place, or why they're not getting there or not getting those outcomes, and what areas they think they need help of, which generally won't be the root cause. There'll be something else. There'll be another underlying issue that they're not quite picking up well. In terms of the foundation stuff, like the basics. When I spoke to my wife about this, she does a lot of coaching, and she talks about getting the foundations right and always working on the foundation stuff every session, working on the foundations, working on that base skill set to
Yeah,
make sure that, like with you and your coaching and the one that I saw, it was seeing that your target audience's view of the world, um, and making sure that the way I've lost my train of thought there, but what I'm trying to get at is you're always making sure you refer it back to those foundational skills that you set up,
yeah.
and making sure that, because a lot of the time people are struggling with a certain outcome, but it's because they're not getting the basics right.
Yes, I would agree with that, and I certainly from a certainly what I've seen with a sports coaching type of analogy is always making sure you got rock solid foundations.
Yeah.
It's like even back to jiu-jitsu, and yes, I know there's a lot of our audience who loves hearing about jiu-jitsu, but
Yes, love it.
listen, if you can survive on the bottom, and you've got a good strong sweep and a couple of good basic foundational moves, then you're good. Then you're sweet from there.
Yeah.
But again, I think that very often people want to, get the great outcomes without having the good solid foundations. And I think that's a big challenge, particularly with the sports aspect, but also I think certainly in selling, I see that a lot as well. Everybody comes in the room, they want to know how do they handle one objection, then like close like a rock star. And what they don't realize is if you've built enough value and trust and rapport throughout the process, then the client's going to want to buy. You don't have to make that hard sale. But a lot of the time, people are just focusing on the outcome, which is how do I make that rock and roll sale?
Yeah.
Give the sales manager a high five and head to the celebration. It's like it just doesn't work like that.
No.
But back to the coaching aspect, I think with regards to, you made mention of meeting them at their view of the world, and that's something we talk about a hell of a lot. But whenever we go through, particularly at the beginning of the workshop, I will always ask people specifically what they want to take away from the training. And there's a couple of reasons why I'll do that. And we invest a lot of time in this. I think we took about an hour and 20 minutes to get through 14 of the team that were there on Thursday and Friday when we were doing that training.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked that question is because effectively they'll say to me, if we're at a influencing and persuading workshop, they'll say to me, oh, I want to be able to influence and persuade better. Yeah, you will be able to influence and persuade better. But here's the thing. It's normally something deeper that's playing out on the surface level. So very often people think they're not able to influence and persuade, and that's what they want to fix. And that's fine. That's what we can do. But very often the surface level thing that we're looking to fix here, that's driven by something much deeper. So when I ask those questions, so we do a little bit of an icebreaker where the colleague actually introduces them, says who they are, what they do, something unique / fun / quirky, and what they want to take away from the day. Then I'll ask them individually and I'll say, what specifically do you want to take away from this? And I'll ask those deeper questions. And sometimes it can be a little bit sort of striking to people, I think, because firstly, they're having to be involved in the actual training, which means that they're going to take away a lot more value. But I ask questions that maybe they've never considered before, because I think that very often things like influence and persuasion, it can come down to not being confident in the moment, and if you're not confident, your body language, your tonality is going to give you away, even if you have the best words in the world. If you're not aligned with it, the high level decision maker will pick you up on that as well. And very often there's the deeper questions that I have to go into to get a real understanding of what's going on with this person. And here's the other thing. Is when I'm listening to each person, I'm hearing something unique about that person, which is all stuff I'm going to bring back throughout the day of training. So if I'm talking to somebody who's got a dog called Bruno, that she walks him twice a week or something, 3 times a week, twice a day or something like that, I'll make references back to Bruno and his evening walks or something like that, because it's something personal, it's something that keeps people engaged, and it's almost like it's fully personalized. And I think that the particular aspect with regards to training, and I know we said we talk about training at another time, but coaching, I think, will tie into this as well with these questions, is if I can ask questions that resonate with that target audience, that's when they're going to be much more engaged. And that's when they're going to start thinking about their context, their circumstance, what's going to work for them. And when you can personalize it and make it highly contextual, that's when people get massive breakthroughs. But that's my experience anyway. That's what I've found.
Yeah, putting it into context for someone is probably one of the most critical aspects of really good coaching, I think, because getting that breakthrough, being able to make sure that they can understand. Well, a lot of people, what I also saw was that a lot of people are doing a lot of the stuff subconsciously or accidentally already, and then the way you coach them through, you get them to shine a spotlight on themselves. Then they realize they're doing it, and they realize they're doing it, but they didn't realize why they were doing it and what outcomes they can get from it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden the light comes on and they're like, oh man, it all makes sense now. So that was something special as well, watching that. The level of interaction was and making them accountable for not just something they wrote on a piece of paper, like, oh, would you like to take away from this? I'd like to influence, persuade. Asking them that question, asking them why. What's your problem with it? Why? What are you finding difficult about it now? And like you said, if you ask the brain a question, it'll go out and find the answer, or attempt anyway, as opposed to when you just tell someone and they go, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those world-class questions. Some of those questions you're asking was really, really quite genius.
It's interesting, guys, because if you use a statement that clashes with somebody's current view of the world, they'll automatically block you out, which is quite interesting. And again, back to that discovery versus disclosure, but very often if we talk about things that somebody, especially early on in a conversation, if you talk about something that is not in somebody's context, then they're very often just going to sort of blank you out, and as a trainer, as a coach, that's when you're going to have a real rough go of it, because they can't relate to you, they're not interested, particularly if they don't want to be there. That's another big challenge. But effectively what we're able to do is, if you can make it relevant to that individual, they can see how this is helpful to them. That's when you really start seeing people getting these breakthroughs. And just another point I think you raised there with regards to, they start learning these strategies and techniques, particularly when we're coaching coaches or we're training coaches or people who are going to do more coaching. You start realizing that, or the audience starts realizing that, you know what, I've done those types of things before. I can think back to, and I think you may have mentioned this, I can think back to times I've done that, but I've done it accidentally. And I think certainly something you actually shared at the actual workshop was making sure that instead of doing it accidentally, we can do it intentionally. So, if somebody has calibrated their questions well, or they have used a good, strong pre-frame to open somebody up, everybody can think of times where they've done that in the past, but maybe they did it 1 out of 10 times. Okay. But if they're doing it intentionally on the regular, that's when they can start getting those much better outcomes. And I think that the thing is there as well is that's where a good structure and a good framework comes through, particularly when I'm working with people who are quite technical in their thought process.
Yes.
If you've got somebody who
kind of a logical form of thought process.
Logical. They think in quite a technical, structured way as well. If you can give a good, solid framework, something that is solid, it's well defined. And also, of course, for anybody who's learning something like coaching brand new, if you can give a structure like that, you can give them something that they can start fleshing out as well. And I think that gives people a lot of confidence to utilize it, which is awesome. And secondly, they can actually really start to think, you know what, I think maybe I can make something from this session, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that the logical thought process and the way it's laid out or can be laid out, very beneficial for me. Obviously, being a tradie, being a carpenter, there is a logical way you build a house, and I can refer a lot of other stuff back to that in the way I do things. It will go back to jiu-jitsu. If I get this right, I get my foundations right, then I can build on top of that. So, and that's the same with the influence and persuasion, negotiation, difficult conversations, all that. You got to have that good structure in place. And like you said, if you're doing things accidentally or subconsciously, it's hard to track the result because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're getting from it. But if you do shine a spotlight on it and start doing it intentionally and then see the result, you can then go, okay, that worked. Why did that work? Or why didn't that work in this particular situation? What did I get wrong here? So you can, and then start tailoring things, and bring in other things. Once you get that part sorted, right, I've got this, I've got this good connection with this person because I pre-framed this.
Yeah.
Now what do I do next? What do I add in next? How do I get to that next outcome on the way? So that was quite a good experience for me to see that as well.
Beautiful. Now, Kaz, you just used the term there, pre-frame. What exactly do you mean by pre-frame? For anybody who's not familiar with that term.
Pre-frame is if you're sitting down with someone, perfect example, if you're sitting down with someone for a difficult conversation, it's basically setting the boundaries.
Yeah. The rules of engagement, yeah.
Engagement, this is what we're here to talk about.
Time to do what we do.
This is I mean, the easiest way is if you're about to face someone difficult conversation, it's going to be rough. You can say to them, listen, I've got to have a difficult conversation with you. I've got bad news. Something like that, where it brings them into line. This is what we're here to talk about. This is what, is on the table today. So pre-framing, getting their attention in the area that you want to talk about so that they're not, so that they can focus on the task at hand. It's kind of like a pre-frame, get everyone on the same page. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Yep.
How close?
Well, again, these are terms that that are used a lot in communication training. What I would say with regards to pre-frame, obviously we've got it as two words put together. So two parts of the word pre and frame put together. Frame, the way I would define it, is the frame of a conversation is the context and direction of a conversation. So very often, if we are giving a presentation, you walk in, good morning, everybody, and bang, you're into your presentation. So as soon as you enter into that, that's the frame of the conversation. Pre-frame, obviously pre is just before getting into the main part of it. So saying some words before you actually get into it, I think, as you've identified there, which is something like it's going to be a tough conversation or what have you. But you're setting some degree of expectations and managing those situations as well. Guys, what's your take on this with regards to, I think there's a lot of people out there who have big fears with regards to having difficult conversations. Matter of fact, I think it was June of last year, in 1 month, I got approached by 3 different heads of people. So we had HR, we had a head of L&D, learning and development, and we had a head of people and culture having a conversation with me with regards to providing coaching for their teams around difficult conversations or courageous conversations, I think somebody wanted to call it, or difficult, whatever. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think they need to be difficult conversations? What makes it a difficult conversation? What's a potential solution for it? Because you might be surprised to know I've got a few thoughts on this.
Oh, really? Difficult conversations. Well, I mean, they're always going to come about, aren't they? No matter where in your life, you have to learn to face these difficult conversations. And it depends on what kind of thought process you've got going in. Maybe some people have problems with difficult conversations because they don't want to be heard. They don't want their opinions to hurt the other person.
Mm.
Maybe they, maybe the other person is, like you said, very difficult to deal with, very opinionated, and they don't like clashing with them. For me, difficult conversations become very easy when you've built rapport with someone, you've got a connection with them.
Yeah.
And especially when you're seeing the world from their point of view, what they need, what their values are, I guess, or what they believe in, or what they want from a certain situation. And if you can identify all that, maybe get to their objections or their point of view before they do, then the whole difficult conversation isn't that difficult at all.
Yeah.
It's more like you can actually not so much turn them, but you can predict what's going to happen, and therefore maybe get them around more to your way of thinking, or a more shared goal, as opposed to, that's the thing about difficult people. They're the best people to work with, because you end up with something better than you both had in the first place, I believe. So that's difficult conversations. As far as why they come up so often, maybe it's because there's a lot more online stuff now. Maybe there's a lot less, especially after COVID, and the way, a lot of people are working from home or working remotely.
Yeah.
A lot of conversations happen online. It's hard to read tone online, on the words. It's just words on a page. So maybe there's a lot of misinterpretation around that, as far as at a guess, obviously, but being trained and having some actual coaching around difficult conversations is a great idea, I think, because it helps not only that difficult conversation, but it helps you in all other areas of your life as well. Negotiations, influence and persuasion, all those kind of things.
Yeah. I think there's quite a few different elements to it. And again, this is something that a lot of leadership is having to deal with regard, well, always has had to deal with, I suppose. Is one of the reasons people take on a leadership mantle is, yes, you got the title, maybe, and hopefully you got the pay increase as well. But effectively now you have to be able to deal with all of the interhuman situations that are going to go on. So interpersonal situations that are going to go on there.
Yeah, you're responsible for those people now. You're responsible for the outcome instead of
absolutely.
making sure the outcome happens. You're responsible for the people who do that. So
absolutely, 100%. I'll tell you this though. I think that the fear that people can have, and I think there's a number of different reasons for it, but the fear of having that conversation is very often much bigger than the conversation itself.
Yes.
So I think particularly people who shy away from the conflict, and I think, listen, I mean, let's be honest here. I think human beings are designed in some way, shape, or form to make sure that they are, interpersonal as well, because we do need each other to survive, and to particularly if you're in a leadership position, you need to be able to get on well with other people, to build relationships. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to be able to lead people, and certainly to influence and persuade. But I do see people, and I think it's got it's got a lot to do with people not being exposed to disagreeability on the regular. Is to actually thinking about this issue that I've got a conversation, and I think it very often the concern that we can have about the conversation can become bigger than actually the problem that we'll deal with. When we have to deal with it, and it's quite interesting, because I think that very often when these things get too big in our heads, we tend to shy away from them more so. And we've all been through situations, interpersonal situations, where we walk away from the situation, something we worried about in the past, and we think, why the hell was I so worried about that in the first place? But this can get outside of our minds so it can get so big in our heads. It can be a real tough go, but we lose the battle before we even get into it.
Yeah, the old thing of fear's an inch wide, a mile wide and an inch deep. You wind it up into this big thing, and the outcome too. I think people are scared of the reaction from the other person.
Absolutely.
The book that you put me onto, I'm reading it now. Mel
Robbins.
Sorry, Mel Robbins.
Sorry, Mel.
Sorry, Mel. She's listening. She's listening. Obviously, when she looks back at where it all began, it'll be that moment just then. she puts it well in one of her sessions. She says that if you lie or you're not truthful to someone and they find out the truth, then that's on you. That reaction that they give is on you. But if you tell them the truth, their reaction to it, as good or as bad as it is, that's on them. You can't control their reaction to the truth. So maybe there's, like you said, there's a fear of having that difficult conversation
Yeah,
because you're worried about the outcome. Well, the outcome's
yeah.
out of your hands. You can't control what the other person does or how the other person takes on that information. You just have to give it to them in the best possible light you can.
I would challenge that slightly, because I believe that very, very often how we communicate something, and again, this is a belief I have to instill in my clients because I believe it creates a real growth mindset around communication, which is how I communicate something dictates how it's interpreted and therefore how it's reacted on. And I really believe that that if I need to influence and persuade somebody, and that would include mitigating any potential explosive situations. Let's deal with worst case scenario here. If I can communicate in a way that's going to de-escalate that, then it's something I can be proactive with. If I just think, well, I'm just going to say it and their reaction's their reaction, yeah, I can certainly take that. I really can take that point 100%. But the way I think about it, and actually I said this yesterday to this crew I was working with yesterday, again, beautiful people, so open-minded, engaged. I said to them, one of the things I train, particularly my leadership of my communicators, is my audience's interpretation of my message is my responsibility. So I say that again. It's like my audience's interpretation of my message is my responsibility. And with that said, not saying that I would always get it right by any stretch of the imagination, but if I think like that, then it's like, okay, thinking about this target audience, how do I communicate in a way to make this information land to get that best possible outcome? Because then at least I can be proactive. If I'm going to go in and deal with somebody who I have a personality conflict with, I'm going to deal with it very differently to if I'm dealing with somebody who's just resistant to doing the work because they don't understand. So I will communicate that in two very, very, very different ways to hopefully get a better outcome in both of those. Does that resonate?
Absolutely, it does. And just to clarify what I was saying, I mean, their reaction to what you tell them, if you tell them the truth, what I didn't mean just walk into a room, drop a bomb, and walk out. So I mean that obviously don't just shoot from the hip, but try to always keep in mind that someone's reaction to what you're telling them is a fair way out of your control, you know. So maybe there's a fear there that people have with around difficult conversations or tough talking points, you know, even meetings, presentations, standing up. It can all be tough stuff, you know. And there's a really big fear when you stand up in front of a room and you say, "All right, guys, just pay attention for a second," and everyone just stops and looks at you. You know, what, these people are actually listening to me, and you know, the heart rate goes up. So. All skills you can learn, all good skills you can learn. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, but there was something that you spoke about right at the start where you said this week you trained about 50 people.
Yeah.
From, was it 7 or 8 different industries?
7 or 8 different industries. Yeah. There was one very mixed group. Sorry, 2 very mixed groups that I worked with. And by that I mean there was different industries represented there, and then one was a uniform business.
So how do you, is it a lot more difficult training people from different areas, like as in different industries?
Yeah.
On the same topic than it is if you, I mean, to me, it would be horrible to try and train people from sales, people from construction, people from, you know, IT, medical, all that on the same topic, because it'd be very hard to put it in some form of context where if you've got a room full of tradies pretty much close to on the same page, I mean, wouldn't take as much to get them there. So talk to me about how you go about that with people from all different walks of life and all different industries trying to learn the same thing.
Yeah.
How do you try that? That to me sounds like corralling cats or...
It's a beautiful concept, mate. It really is. It's a beautiful concept, and I took a while to figure it, sort of start thinking around it, but um, it's a different dynamic when you're training somebody. When you're training, like yesterday, I was training a division for a company, and they all knew each other, and there's that very different social dynamic. So, firstly, they all had the same contexts. So the examples I could use were closer to the bone, so to speak. The second thing was that they will have, sort of a almost like a social hierarchy between them as well. So they'll have their inside jokes and stuff like that, what I won't necessarily be across, but that's fine as well. So you've got that aspect. Also, then you will have certain what I'm going to call cultural leaders within that division, and who is the person that people look to and that type of thing. It's not always hierarchical either. Very often it's strength of character or somebody that people gravitate towards. When we're dealing with people in different industries, very, very, very important. I have to make stuff as relevant as possible for their situation. And that's another reason why I'll go around and I'll ask each person, what they do, what industries they're in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then what my job is to do, what I do my best to do, is to give examples, give one concept, and then communicate that concept in 3 or 4 different industries or 3 or 4 different roles. So if it's let's just talk about influence and persuasion, because that was in my head from yesterday. If I'm talking to a C-suite decision maker in the room who needs to influence and persuade their team, if I've got a team member who needs to influence and persuade up, if I'm then have somebody in the room who is a salesperson, needs to influence the client or the decision maker, if I'm dealing with somebody who's the head of the department that needs to influence and persuade another stakeholder from another department, I will reel off examples as quickly as I can to each person there so that they get some degree of reference. So I need to be able to think about these things and how they could relay, maybe not perfectly in that person's day-to-day minutiae of what they do, but at least in their context, to some degree. And I would say that I'm probably doing it more with regards to the positions that people are holding rather than the sectors they're in. Although sectors, from time to time, I will make those differentiations, particularly if they are, and again, I'm thinking about the sales world. If I'm training salespeople, you've got some people in there that are selling aspirational purchases, and by that I mean maybe a flash car or particular watches, or spa treatments or something like that, versus then people who are selling in highly competitive marketplaces where it's big B2B business, big ticket stuff, and they're up against big competitors in the marketplace as well. So the whole communication would be different in those contexts. One thing I would say, and this is a real dangerous area we can get into, is even if I'm an expert in what they do, like I spent a long time in financial services, if I'm an expert in what they do, I will refrain from trying to give them the exact thing that they would do in their exact day-to-day activity. Okay, and the reason I say that is because if I am dealing with somebody who's in financial services, let's say they are brokering a deal with an underwriter. If you've got somebody who's brokering a deal with an underwriter for a marine contract versus a professional indemnities contract, they would say different things or approach it from a slightly different point of view with that. So I wouldn't go in and try and pinpoint exactly what they would say using exactly the right words, because I'm going in too narrow and the chances of me getting it wrong are much bigger. Okay, because if I go into the minutia, I don't even know. I mean, if I'm talking to an underwriter, I might talk to them different in the morning than I would do in the afternoon. So you run that risk of, I think very often, if I was trying to show off how much I know, then I ran that risk of communicating in a way that actually alienates somebody. And as soon as somebody is lost, as soon as they check out, it's game over. It really is. So I would be broader. I think I do the best to give examples as best I can to their role, maybe broadly to their industry as well, potentially, if I know a little bit about it. But again, I come back to that point with regards to discovery is way more powerful than disclosure. And what I mean by that is if I teach a concept, and I give a broad example on something that everybody's experienced before. And then effectively, if the attendee can discover how they would use that in their role, now you've got a learned skill. Now you've got a skill to take a deeper level of ownership of.
Yes.
And that means that there's a much higher chance of that person going away, seeing it, having their own idea about it, going away and starting to apply it. And if you do different things, you're going to get different outcomes. So hopefully, you do better things, you're going to get better outcomes. But that's probably as far as I go, as deep as I will go, deep enough to make it for it to make sense, deep enough for people to see how it could apply in their industry. But I'm certainly not going to tell them, exactly step by step what they should do in their particular role, because that approach could differ if you do the same thing 3 times in one day, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get it now. So you kind of dangle it out in front of them, get it as close as they can, and then they can just twist it a little bit to their individual.
Absolutely. 100%. Because again, if they can think about, okay, I get that as a broad concept, how do I actually apply this in my life? If they get that breakthrough, then very often they will not forget that. And if they can go there in the mind, in the classroom, then they have a better chance of going there in the body when they go back to work and actually doing it.
Have a think back to this particular difficult conversation that you had. I want you to pick one or an upcoming one or something and put that into context. I think those were the rough examples that you gave that day.
Yes.
Pick something that you've had problems with and try and apply this strategy to it, and then see if the outcomes in your mind would have been different. There was quite a few aha moments around that too, I believe.
Yeah. There really is. It's again, if I'm just walking in there and I'm just talking about what they should do, firstly, I think I might run the risk of not being seen as credible, because they're thinking, well, who the hell are you? What do you know about my job? And that type of thing. But if I can be putting stuff out there and they're thinking about how could I actually apply that, and then they think about, they have that moment, that breakthrough moment. It's like, okay, I was 95% right there. That's the other 5% that comes in. That's the key to it, which is cool. That was that's the thought process behind it. And again, we don't just want to tell people what to do or give them tips and tricks for short-term results. We want people to take ownership of these strategies, techniques, and understandings for the longer term as well, which is crucial.
Tips and tricks, yeah. I know now. Strategies, trainings, understandings. I've only tripped up on that about 10 times. Yes, it's a good one, that one. Being able to, I think that's years ago. I've referred to this a few times. I got taught and I'm made to understand that when you're searching to do something, find out as many different ways of doing it as you can. Beautiful. And tailor that to suit yourself, because we're not all the same, and we're not in the same we're not in the same situation, the same environment. We haven't done no one's been through what I've been through to get to this point, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or this is the way. Yes, that strategy is a very good strategy. If I twist it a little bit, this suits how I deliver things, and maybe then if I'm having problems on a certain aspect, then I can come back and ask a question. Why isn't it working in this certain particular example? I'm having problems just finishing this bit off here. And you might find, it's that 5% you were talking about.
Yeah.
But it's not the last 5%. It's actually somewhere in the middle or towards the beginning. You're missing this vital step.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing. So don't think of it as the top up 5%. It might be you didn't quite get the foundation right, mate. You didn't quite make that connection at the start or something like that. So, valuable steps.
Yeah. What I do say as well is to any clients that I work with, it's always like, I'll always endeavor to give you the best possible answer I can, because I know very often there's questions that come up and they say, Paul, how would you deal with that in this and this scenario? And very often I'll always try and give the best answer I can. But from time to time, they are thinking about a lived experience they've got there, a particular situation they're dealing with. And it might be emotional. It might be very contextually deep as well.
Yeah.
And them just giving me the information. Firstly, I'm only getting one side of the story, not saying that people would be misleading me or anything, but they're giving me one side of the information. So very often the visual image I can develop from their side of the story might be something very different for what I see if I'm staying next to them in the moment there.
Yep.
So very often then what I'll say is this, if you need to give me more information, I'm happy to give you a more detailed response. And very often we'll sit during the breaks and they'll talk to me about this problem, or
Yep.
afterwards, and we have a sit down and a chat and what have you, just with regards to particular challenges they're dealing with. I'll give you an example. There was a negotiations course I was running a few years ago. I don't know if I've told you the story, but right at the back of the class there was some guy who wasn't a volunteer. He was a voluntold. He was a voluntold to be there. Anyway, he didn't come in with the sprightliest of attitudes, but he wasn't sort of getting, he wasn't sort of getting out of hand or anything like that. And I was going through concepts and giving examples and stuff, and I can hear this like very light. But again, he wasn't being disagreeable enough for me to call him on it, or to irritate anybody else. But I don't know what happened at lunchtime. I think he might have gone to the pub because he came back with a lot more enthusiasm. And it's like straight after, it's like I give another concept. He goes, "I'm sorry, Paul. No disrespect to you, man." It's like, okay, here we go. Yeah, I can hear that eye of the tiger already.
As soon as those words come out of someone's mouth, bang.
Yeah, but he goes, this won't work. And I said, "Oh, really? Tell me about that, because this is stuff I use." And he goes, "Well, we've got this one client called Crazy Larry, and it won't work. We've tried everything with Crazy Larry. It won't work with Crazy Larry." And I said, "Well, okay, you got one Crazy Larry this wouldn't work on." And we figured out he'd done about 6 or 7 things. It wasn't everything, okay? And I said, "How many other clients you got?" He goes, "Oh, about 45. And I said, "Okay, will it work with him?" He goes, "Yeah, probably that situation." And I said, "Well, in that case, mate, listen, I can't help you with Crazy Larry. Only the police can help you with Crazy Larry." It's like, and I don't even know what the situation is that makes Crazy Larry Crazy Larry. Maybe they just got 2 different personality types. Maybe just caught him on a bad day. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we have it.
Well, there's something I want to talk to you about as well. Keeping it all positive and making sure that everyone stays nice and positive and staying in the same frame of mind, taking away that positivity too. So they look back at the training session or the coaching sessions.
Yeah.
With real positive actions. And because we know that the human brain's really negatively wired.
Yeah.
And it's standing up in front of people, coaching them. It would be easy to pick up on that one. You could help 99 people and one person at the back's going, nah.
Yeah.
And that would be the thing that would kind of undermine everything and take away all the goodness. You'll focus on that. So making sure that people stay positive and staying, focused on the task at hand. It must be something that has taken a lot of time for you to learn as well, to keep control.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, this week I had a very, very, I wouldn't say negative person, but it wasn't recently, it wasn't yesterday, but earlier on in the week, somebody who was very awkward, on one of the trainings. And, my first interaction with her, it was very, very weird. And then I just thought, okay, I'm not going to put my focus onto that weird energy. It was almost like, it was done virtually and what have you. And it was, she didn't have a camera on and she wouldn't put a camera on, and just trying to, I don't know if it was trying to get attention or what have you, but it was just, my decision was, it was like, okay, I had the first interaction. I just thought I'm going to put my energy with people who want to be there, because she blatantly said to me she'd been forced onto the training by her boss and she already knew everything I was going to say. And it's just like, okay, all right. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to put my focus onto, I'm just going to put my focus onto people who want to be there. And I think that is the biggest thing, man. And you're coming back to that realization of wherever you put your focus is going to dictate everything else. It really is, because I've seen facilitators get overwhelmed by that situation before. They've just got negativity. They've got one little drop of negativity in the room. They focus on it and they try and convert that person and turn that person around. And my best estimation is focus on people who are there for your help, and then you will deliver well. If you deliver well, you'll bring that person along with you as well, unless they just, they just have got no interest in spending any time with you, or they, they're just, they don't see the benefit in being there. You need to be getting a return on your energy invested, I think. And if you've got somebody who's just really standoffish, very, very negative about it, it's like, I want to put my energy into people who want to be here, you know?
Precisely. I mean, you got 20 people in the room and one's being very difficult.
Yeah,
The more you try and please that difficult person, the more energy and the more learning and the more coaching you're taking away from the other 19 people. You know,
absolutely.
that person, no matter what you throw at them, may not be interested. So just let them sit. If
Yeah,
they want to play, they can play. Leave them sitting
yeah.
on the sideline over there. And if they want to play, they can play.
But I deserve to get that interaction because, to be honest with you, this entire 2024, everybody has just been bloody gold to work with, mate.
Oh,
Gold
really?
to work with.
Yes.
I have had nothing but a slew of open-minded growth mindset people. So if you're listening to this, folks, and I've worked with you over the last few years, bloody love you. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. That's good. Especially the growth mindset.
Better. There's nothing better than people who are at the training and they're open to learning. You know, I mean, I've got people who are kind of undecided there. That's my role. That's what I need to do. I need to open people up. But when you have people that are there, they're looking forward to it. It's like, yes, we've been seen as an asset by our business. That's why they've invested in us to be here. It's beautiful. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think that I speaking from personal experience, and I know you've been on a journey the last couple of years, mate, so I'm sure you'll add to this as well. But when people start getting addicted to that professional development or ongoing learning, it takes so much pressure off because you know you can always learn a new strategy or a new way of thinking to help you overcome a problem. And I think that's so beautiful, man. I really do. I think it starts first, it gives you a shock because you realize how much more you have to learn, which is a humbling experience. But second, you start realizing that you have less stress because you're actually progressing. And I think that if people are not progressing, I think there's a lot of stress that can come with that. And professional development and being able to apply the stuff, not just learn it and sort of be a seminar junkie or something, but go away and apply it. And you start realizing, my God, if I can get these better outcomes like this, just by learning these small things here, what else am I capable of? And that's a beautiful place to be. It really is.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. Stress to me, I've realized, especially, well, the way it affects me most is unmade decisions or stuff that I haven't done that I'm purposely putting off. What's the word? Procrastination. Yeah. It's not the big thing.
I thought you were about to say tax return.
Tax returns right at the top, mate. It's always a stressful time of year. Let's not go there. They might be listening. So being a tradie, apparently they're after us every year. Like, man, what are you talking about? I could pay a lot of tax. No, stress, unmade decisions for me, and unmade decisions and stuff I haven't done, it all adds up. Yeah. And like you said, when you get this learning growth mindset and you become very curious about things, which is what I'm at now. My mind is just begging for more information. One thing that has opened my eyes to is that what we talked about is where you spend your energy.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff that I used to do. If you wind me back 2 or 3 years, 4 years ago, I would just waste so much energy worrying about some things, and it was a lot of stuff that was completely out of my control, stuff that I couldn't possibly influence the outcome of.
Yeah,
and I would waste so much energy down it, and it would drag so much of my time and mental energy out, and it would take my focus off what was important. Now I'm very capable of but there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing. I can literally just switch it off. Annoys my wife. She's like, why aren't you worried about that? Why aren't you? There's nothing I can do about it. I can go over there and yell and jump up and down, but it's not going to make any difference. The outcome beyond me. I've got enough worries over here. That, and the other thing that the growth mindset gets me is that I'm very curious around topics that I already think I know. Because we've talked about it, how if you read a book, for instance, and then an audio book, let's say it's something on negotiation or sales or something, right? And you learn it, it's got some new strategies, techniques, you take them on, you come back to that book, doesn't matter when, maybe months or a year down the track, read it again, you'll pick up different little things in that book that you either didn't take on or weren't ready to take on, but because you've progressed, you've got it. Now that to me, it also plays out in the way other people approach the same subject. So if I'm in that coaching arena, I can look at how other people interpret what you're saying, and they interpret a situation differently, which gives me another spin on it, gives me a more worldly view of that topic.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I'm really, really curious about now, is stuff that I think I already know. I obviously don't know everything about everything. But that's what I'm really getting a buzz and a kick out of, is finding a little bit of a different view, or a little bit of a different take, a little bit of a different strategy on something that I already know.
Absolutely.
Just twist, eh?
Yeah, 100%. And I think even, I know you consume a lot of audiobooks, but even the way that people phrase certain things, it's like, that's a brilliant way of phrasing it, because very often if we can phrase things up nicely, I think that is a real key of great communication. Somebody like Hormozi does this so well, Alex Hormozi. The way he communicates, the way he sums things up is absolutely on par with anybody else I've ever seen communicate. I think he's absolutely brilliant with that. But being able
I think it's because he can keep it so simple. It's like yourself, that anyone can make something sound more complicated.
Yes.
It takes real genius to be able to take something that's complicated or new and lay it out in a very simple, easy to understand sentence or strategy or take on it. And you do it very well. Hormozi does it. For some reason, Hormozi said something, and I'm just like, oh wow, that's what you're mumbling on about, trying to tell. It's like a clear voice coming through. Yeah.
Brilliant way of putting it. Absolutely brilliant way of putting it. It's like a clear voice coming through. He really does. He communicates it very, very well. But I think that being able to get that across is very, very, very powerful there. But a couple of other things you touched on there, Cuz, as well. Being able to focus on things that are in your control or in your influence, very important. And also, just for people listening to this, folks, realize this, that just because you're not worried about something, or you're not actively showing that you're worried or you're outraged about it, doesn't mean that you don't care. It's just you get to choose where you're putting your energy. That's the first thing. And I think that was a big stumbling block I had, which was, if I'm not angry about something, it means I don't care about it. Or if I'm not going out and shaking my fist at the sky because the sun's not coming out, or because the sun is out, I have no control over that. But it's like, just because I'm not acting in that highly energized state, let's say it, then doesn't mean I don't care about it. But it's just, you get that choice where to put your energy. And I'll tell you this as well, cousin, this is extra bonus for anybody here listening with regards to coaching. Real life application of this is, when I am training leaders, particularly leaders to coach, my leaders would love to say to you that they do coaching with their clients or with their teammates on a regular basis, be it weekly or monthly. Truth of the matter is, they are busy people, they're successful people, and coaching is done when it becomes a priority. And sometimes if they're able to do that time-wise and they can do the regular coaching, they're all across it. But a lot of the time it comes up to when people are not actually getting good results. So the thing is, as well, just to be very, very, very careful with this, folks, is if you're dealing with somebody who's got a reason why they can't achieve what you want them to achieve, make sure that factor is in either of yours, and you're going to coach them through it to help them with it. Make sure that reason is something that is in either of your parties' control or in either of your parties' areas of influence. Because what I have seen before is I've seen people raise reasons why they can't achieve particular outcomes. So I sit down, I want to do some coaching, somebody raises a reason why they can't achieve their particular results or what have you. And that reason is way outside both of our areas of control, both of our areas of influence. Then we are effectively not going to get a return on our time invested. If I say to you, cuz, if you're coaching me, you're my boss, you're my leader, what have you, and you say to me, Paul, we need to help you hit your numbers every month. And I say to you, cuz, I can't hit my numbers because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, or west and east. You know what I'm saying? I have no control over that. And then very often I see people trying to negotiate how to get through that defense mechanism that people often put up, and it becomes very, very messy. It becomes very awkward, So when it comes to coaching, making sure that you're working with somebody and dealing with particular challenges that are in either of your areas of control or in either of your areas of influence.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. Otherwise, you're just going to be putting a lot of energy into something that's not going to give you a return.
Yeah. Jiu-jitsu taught me that there's nothing I can do to control what you do. I can only how I react to it and how I can manipulate you into a certain area, kind of cut off your options. When I really started to see the effect that worrying about stuff out of your control had was when you'd look at the weather before you went to work the next day. Like it's going to look at the weather and it's going to rain tomorrow. And I'm a
Yeah.
trader, look outside, yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm going to get wet. And you put yourself in this like negative frame of mind, I
Yeah.
want the sun to shine, I want
Yeah.
the sun to shine. I can go out there, I can shut down lanes of traffic, I can cause roadblocks, all the good stuff. I can't do that when it rains. And I'd just be like, oh, it'd start to drag on me. So I stopped watching the news and I took the BOM app, the BOM, the Bureau of Meteorology app. I took it off. I got a thumbs up again
There you go. Yeah.
every week. Yeah, so I took that off the phone and I just didn't watch the news anymore and didn't stop watching the news, but didn't watch the weather because there was nothing I could do to change the weather.
Absolutely.
But all it was doing was by knowing that, for instance, it's going to rain tomorrow, have a negative effect on me, and I'll go to work dragging. Like, ugh,
Absolutely.
don't need that.
With the exception of knowing what to wear, because as Billy Connolly says, there's no such thing as bad weather. It's just the wrong clothing.
I suffer from that. I suffer from that. There's been so many days recently where I get to work and I'm like, these shorts were a shocking idea today. Like it's freezing. We better get moving. If we're stood still, these little knees are going to pop off.
There you go.
Thanks.
There you go.
World-class questions, Paulie.
Yes.
World-class questions. Couple of beauty. I mean, come on, hit me with a couple of world-class questions to get people's minds to go and get, or questions to go and get people's minds to find an answer. They usually start with words like how. How do you expect me to do that?
Yeah.
Maybe, how do you see yourself getting that kind of outcome?
Yeah.
Are those the kind of questions you alluded to it earlier that the world-class questions, kind of what makes them?
World-class questions, I think, are questions, the type of questions that create pause in the target audience. They create pause and they create a thought process. And what I would say is they are normally just out of the target audience's automatic response range. And what I mean by that is you literally have to stop and think about it. Okay. Because if I just ask you a straightforward question, like what's your name, you're going to give me a straightforward answer. There's going to be no thought process behind it. But what I need to be able to do is, knowing what the outcome is that I'm after, I need to be able to set a question that is going to start getting people thinking about things they haven't considered before. That's what I believe is a world-class question. Now, that would be an outcome it would create time for thought, time for reflection, because when we start doing that, we start thinking that different way, and that's when we start uncovering different things. Now, the components of world-class questions is firstly being able to be in rapport, because you can ask, well, most of the time, particularly as a coach, you want to be in rapport with somebody. You want to have a degree of connection with them, which is something you go out and hunt, which I think is a very rare thing that people do. And I think your ability to create rapport with people is through the roof. The second thing is being able to frame up a question. Now, what I mean by this is very often people will be too generic with their questions. And what I mean by that is, if I sat down with you and let's just say, met you at the coffee shop and I sat down with you and I said, hi, Craig, my name's Paul. We've never met before, but tell me, what do you want from today? There could be so many contexts there. You could tell me about what you wanted from work, what you wanted from the gym, what you wanted from that your friend was going to give you a call back. It's way too broad. So you're not going to get the answers in from that. So what you have to be able to do to ask good questions, I think, is you have to be able to set context and effectively get somebody to think down a certain pattern or down through a certain road there effectively. Because if the question's too broad, you're not going to be able to direct that thought process in the direction you want them to go down. So setting context is going to be a big one. Okay, that's where we use pre-frames to be able to set context in a certain way. You okay? Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Brain scroll.
The next thing is, I think, is being able to be very aware of potential objections that people might hold, and you would hope they would voice them. But what I found very often is people will just go through the motions, and they will be almost, I don't want to use the term passive aggressive, maybe passive in coaching. They might be more passive in coaching. By that, it's just like they're going through the motions, they're still picking up their salary and everything like that, but they're just going through the motions of it.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the factors of that we have to be able to do is we have to be able to take objections off the table before they take ownership of it. So if I've got a mental objection that I'm being coached by somebody who has no credibility in my eyes, I'm just going to be very, very passive with it and effectively play out the clock. We've got an hour coaching session every week just to go through. So having an idea of what people's preconceived ideas are and effectively being able to see the world through your target audience's eyes as best as possible, which is obviously something we teach a lot. If you can get that idea and remove those objections to the defense mechanisms that people very often can have, then you can start framing up these world-class questions that's going to allow people to really think in a different way. So those would be some components of it. I think a high degree of emotional intelligence, which is something that can be worked on the regular. But asking questions that are relevant to that person's situation. And also, here's the other thing, and you've heard me say this, and I've said this on the podcast as well. So much about leadership and certainly about coaching is understanding that we're trying to create a behavioral change in somebody else. Okay. If not, then we just keep them doing what they're doing, or we want them to do it at a higher level. They're doing great. We want them to take them to the next level. That's awesome. But understanding the components of human behavioral change, and the two base ones I believe are, from my experience in the work I do, is the first thing is the awareness of what needs to change. So maybe in a coaching situation, people are aware they're not achieving their weekly KPIs or monthly KPIs, or whatever it is. So they're aware of what needs to change. Second thing is cost associated with staying the same or potential reward for making a change. If we don't cover those two things off, we're not creating any grounds for human behavioral change, certainly not for the long term. Maybe something that people just give us lip service on, but we want to create that long-lasting behavioral change rather than just, this is what I need you to do. Does that make sense, mate? Does that resonate?
Yeah, but having your eyes open to not so much what you're doing to stay in this place, like the growth mindset kind of thing. Like if I stay doing what I'm doing now, I'll still be here next year.
Yeah. How terrifying is that thought, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So me sitting here right now, I'm the product of what I started 6 months ago, that kind of thing. But if I'm aware of that, and I think a lot of people are aware of what it is, you've just got to shine a light on it. But then telling them the cost of sitting here, or the reward that you could get for going and getting it, is what I think a lot of people will struggle with. I think a lot of people are aware, and in certain situations are aware of what they're doing. That's not the best. You think about, maybe think about it in terms of bad habits, like I'm eating too much, or I'm not moving enough, or I'm eating, drinking too much, or something like smoking. That those kind of situations, you're aware of what that is. But then when you really shine a light on the cost of what that's taking on you, the toll, and or also the possible benefit of stopping and going and trying to do this, that's where the real change lies, and being able to do that in people and get them to realize it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it happens overnight. I think you made some points of that as well. It's often it can be a significant emotional experience where people have like a huge, health incident or something. It's like, no more. I'm not taking this anymore. I've got to make a change here.
Yeah.
But certainly with things like, vices, things like, to your point, smoking, drinking too much, eating too much of the wrong foods, and that type of stuff. Any human behavior that we undertake that gives us short-term benefits, aka dopamine release, serotonin release, all of this stuff, like a lot of those sort of vices, if I can use that term, do.
Yeah, absolutely.
We very often, we're focusing on what that gives me for the short term. And that's where our indulgence lies. And we're not thinking about the compounded effect in the longer term,
Yeah.
which is quite interesting. And it's something I'm playing around with a few thoughts around that as to how to really be able to get people to realize the impact, the compounded effect of this, and not just logically, because I think everybody understands logically where this is going to end up, but we don't always act logically. It's how do you make that a significant emotional experience, and I want to be able to deliver it in an ethical manner, because I think you can. I think that people in medical roles are in a position where they can say, "Listen, you need to fix this very quickly, or this is going to be a potential problem."
Yes.
But I think a lot of the time, as human beings, we're consciously aware of what the long-term accumulation problem is going to be, but we'll still take the short-term satisfaction, of having that extra steak, or having that one more beer, having that smoke, whatever it is, having that second piece of fast food. But it's like we'll take that short-term benefit rather than worry about the long-term gain until something significant happens. And that's what's beautiful, man. It's when people get to that position and say, you know what, enough is enough. Huh?
Yeah.
Enough
Especially when you think it, especially the bad habits one, because I think it's harder to break a bad habit than it is to start a new one. Because a new one, you can start little.
Yes.
You start 10 push-ups a day, and add 10 each week or something like that. But when you think of a bad habit, something that you've been doing, like maybe I've been smoking for 20 years, or I've been, binge drinking, there's a lot more to it than this. Oh, I'll just stop. It's very hard to
absolutely.
just stop. Yeah, it's so, and that, like you're saying, if you're going to change someone's behavior, then if it's a bad habit, a bad vice, it's got to be a slow progression. Because if you try and stop smoking cold turkey, it very rarely works. Like it will work, but you got to give it quite a few times. Sometimes it does work, but if you want to stop drinking, maybe slow down.
Yeah.
Don't just go cold turkey. Slow down the way you started. So, yeah,
I think there's also a lot of other sort of social factors that are involved around that as well. I mean, if your peer group does what you don't want to do it anymore, you might need to find a new peer group.
Peer pressure from your mates is a big one, especially when they're big South Africans and they don't take no for an answer. Difficult conversations from you're the easy one too. The other guy blew me up this week because he was stuck behind one of our cranes on the road. He's late for work. I'm in an induction and he blows me up on a text message in front of everyone. I wasn't even driving the crane. It was someone else. How dare you? I was already late, going so slow. Get off the road. It's hilarious.
Well, it was recently his birthday, so he's feeling everything at 48. So there we go.
Getting old. Come with me. It's good fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, my brother, I think we're going to wrap it up there, yeah?
Hey, listen, I hope that left enough meat on the bone for people to give us a call, get some coaching into them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And folks, if any of you are listening and you enjoy what we're talking about and what have you, you've got a team you want to provide some training for, we've still got spaces throughout the rest of the year. We're taking bookings now up into June of next year. So but if you like the type of approach we're talking about here and anything leadership, communication, or sales, feel free to reach out. If not, keep enjoying what we're putting out here. Again, if you know anybody who is looking, then that's absolutely fine as well. Kaz, anything you'd like to add?
No. I've exhausted everything today. I am grateful as always for your presence and for everyone watching, all the feedback we're getting and the love that's been thrown our way and the smart comments. I love it all. I think it's fantastic. I never saw myself sitting out here doing this, but I'm glad that I've got some feedback that I've helped some people and like reframed a bit of stuff for them and helped out, and that means the world to me. That's awesome that I can help people. So
mate,
really happy with that.
It's a hell of a journey, brother. I really appreciate you being on here. And folks, to all of you who listen and contribute and interact, it's really appreciated. And keep doing what you're doing. Until next time, take care. Cheers, guys. Thanks, mate.